Hi guys, and welcome to Susty Talks. I'm Elle, and I'm hosting this podcast, and I'm super excited to be here. If you're not familiar, Susty Talks is a community-centered podcast that aims to spark genuine conversations about ethical fashion, sustainable change, and intersectional solutions. And I just hope this online space also helps drive change, empowers action, and makes sustainability more accessible and relevant to everyone. And this is a self-funded initiative. I sell vintage clothing on eBay. If you want to support, there will be a link in my description. And then I also am working on Mexican artisanal denim collections. This will be my first collection. I will hopefully release it later this year in Chicago to really inspire upcycling and just pushing and challenging against the mainstream narratives in the fashion industry, because as you know, we have a lot of fast fashion going on. But I've been reflecting a lot about New Year's and especially how that affects the fashion industry. I feel like a lot of times we have to hype ourselves up to take on all these initiatives and to do all these things within January, and it brings so much pressure, I feel like, and so much like, we will promise this and we will do this, and it's great, but like most of the energy fizzles out within 3 weeks, and by February it's almost the same as before. I don't know, I'm hopeful that people keep to their resolutions, especially if it's around like solving the issues in the fashion industry. I'm trying not to be pessimistic. I have always had that tendency to be like, oh, it's not going to work out, or like, why should I try if it's too big of a goal? But even though New Year's brings a lot of pressure, I feel like this year has been the first year I'm actually really excited to have goals and to have personal ambitions. It's really hard for me to have that, especially when I see all the things in the world and feel like I don't have any control over anything, and that I'm just like a little dot in this planet. But I feel like if I focus more on me, I think I will be able to see that I can pursue the things that I want. I've been incredibly selfless in a lot of ways, where I've lost a lot of my sense of like, oh, I can actually control that, I can do this for myself or I can do that for myself. It's my lens has always been like, let me focus on this person or let me focus on this organization, and I don't really feel important right now. I'm just a dot. Like, why would I bother with myself? But I think as I focus more on myself, I think I'll be able to realize that I can do positive things. I can have positive impact in the world outside of like others or relying on others. And this podcast has really helped me clear a lot of insecurities and a lot of like things that have kept me stuck in the past, that have just rendered inaction and just complacency and like turning to others for direction. I don't have a lot of followers, so in terms of my podcast, I know it's just the beginning, and solo podcasts don't really do that well, to be honest, but I feel like if it's fruitful for me, that's what matters. I even stopped myself from filming this podcast episode just because I was like, no one's really going to listen. No one's really going to care. Like, is it really going to, help the world or help fashion industry? But I mean, I personally like it. I find it fulfilling. I'm filming this on a Sunday morning. And to be honest, I used to just like wonder what to do with my life every Sunday morning for the past like 5 years. I would have so much existential crises because I literally didn't have anything planned, and it would freak me out. And I feel like one of my resolutions is to focus more on my podcast, and I've felt the effects already. Like this day, I was like, okay, I'm going to do my podcast, even though it's not going to like be super impactful. I'm just going to continue doing it because it feels good for me. It helps me personally. I'm just going to go on my tangents and see where it goes. And if it gets like 10 views, then I don't really care. Like, I feel like a lot of times people assume that when you start a podcast, you start a YouTube, you just think that they only care about the numbers, but I don't, and hopefully other people don't really care about the numbers if they're doing content, but that's usually the case. I don't really plan on making money about the podcast. I would like to have guests on. I would like to have conversations with interesting people. That's honestly why I started this in the first place. I just want to listen to people, but podcasts for me are not a way to make money. They're not a way for me to find fulfillment or purpose in life. It's just a way for me to have something to do, to be totally honest. And hopefully it has a positive effect as things continue. And I think a lot of people restrain their true self, their true like desires, their true avenues for happiness just because they're like, well, this isn't like that great, like this isn't perfect, this isn't what I originally imagined it to be, like why do I have the right to do this when I can do this or that or blah blah blah. Like we put so many things in our way to justify like not doing what we actually really want. I mean, it's valid if it's gonna hurt someone. Like you should probably not do something if it's gonna like impact someone negatively. I've always just been really struggling with wanting to do the things that I want to do, and it requires vulnerability because I also almost stopped myself because I'm like, who the fuck would want to listen to my personal life? Like it takes vulnerability to share it, but also vulnerability to be like, oh, someone is actually going to like listen to this and like interpret it in their own way, and I have no control of how they're going to perceive it. But I think vulnerability is like so sacred and so beautiful, and so little people honestly online and in person are doing it. Because we go around asking ourselves and others like, how are you doing? And sometimes we put on a YouTube video to ignore our feelings, and then when we're talking to someone else, it's funny because it's true and it's sad, but we ask someone else at work or at school or whatever, how are you doing? And the person is like, oh, I'm doing so good, like I'm just wonderful. And it's all bullshit. Like we know our life is so much more than quote unquote good, but we just like keep it at surface level conversations. I mean, we do have to start somewhere. Like we do need to start with small talk to get to like the deeper, more vulnerable parts of us. But I think vulnerability is something that we're slowly losing as more and more perceptions are formed from our superficial content. I don't want to sound negative, but like when we make content, like what is it really saying about us? Like it's not really saying much. It's just visuals of our outfits, of our clothing. What you see is reality, and we just kind of leave it at that. But it kind of reminds me of one of my favorite sustainable fashion influencers. She used to be so vulnerable. She would tell the most personal stories that she'd make. Her TikToks are about like putting her outfit together, and she really blew up because her outfits and her storytelling was like really captivating. As she grew, I could literally see the energy get sucked out of her. Like she stopped talking, she stopped explaining why she was choosing the outfits that she was choosing. Like she would literally just show the pieces and put them on. I get it, because a lot of people in the comments as she started to grow more on TikTok was all about judging her like maximalistic outfits. She was judged for how she mixed jewelry together. She was judged for the shoes that she put on. Throughout that process, she was able to become successful. She was able to get partnerships, brand deals. She was traveling around the world. She had such great opportunities. She got married. But you can tell that she sacrificed herself and her personality a lot to be able to do what she loved, but still having to deal with a lot of judgment and a lot of negative attention to her self-expression and individuality. And I think that's what social media usually does. It's filled with judgment, it's filled with negativity. And in a way, I'm happy that I'm a small content creator because I don't have to see negative comments. Like all I see right now is positive comments. I know this sounds so weird, but I hope I stay small, or small enough where I don't get so much hate, because she grew to have like 1 million followers on TikTok, and so many comments were just like judging her all the time. And I'm a really sensitive person, so I'd probably quit if I grew to that size. I've never really cared to be super big on like YouTube and my podcast or anything like that. Like even though it's been my goal to do this, it's never been my goal to have big numbers. Like I'm always changing the numbers. Last year I wanted to reach, 200,000 subscribers on YouTube, and then I changed it to 100, and then I changed it to 50, and then I changed it to 20, because I just saw how draining it is for some people to have so much attention. And then there's like controversies, there's drama, and I honestly don't like that. I've been making videos since 5 years ago, and it's been on and off, but I just always did it because I wanted to know how to make videos and express myself within videos and have it be something permanent online. Hopefully this year I can grow enough where people listen to me and like care about the things that I say, but not big enough to the point where I'm having to shut up and stop being vulnerable. And this year has been the first year that I think I'm excited to do the things that I've always wanted to do. Content creation wise, I've been volunteering a lot for the past couple years, I guess for 5 years. I even volunteered before that in high school. So volunteering has always been something part of my life. It's been consistent. And I'm going to change that just because I don't have a lot of savings. I don't have good finances. I have very little in my checkings, very little in my savings. If I spend $50 on something, you know that was a bad decision. Okay? My bank is like, what are you doing? It kind of reminds me that there's this stigma against talking about finances as well. If I ever do get successful with content creation, if I ever do make money off of this podcast, I will be saying, hey guys, I got a brand deal that paid me $2,000 to sell my soul this week. Can you buy the product? Because once I start promoting brands on this podcast that I don't align with, which usually will be the case because I don't really care to support brands that I've never used before, I'm going to be a sellout, and you'll know that. Hopefully one day I don't have to go that route, and that's why I'm prioritizing my finances right now so that I can actually do the things that I want to do without quote unquote selling out. But that will require me having a stable 9 to 5, investing my time in eBay, and if that goes well, having my own thrift store that is local and has a lot of free clothing swaps and free clothing options for the needy. But I think I've mentioned this in the past, but if you don't have money, it really does affect your personal life. It affects how you eat, how you look, how you feel, how you function, what you consume, quite literally, but also mentally. If you don't have the money to go to a museum, then you're going to consume YouTube, or you're going to consume some other thing that's just not as fulfilling or something that you actually wanted to do. And again, it's for good reason. I think I really need to focus on myself. I don't know if you've heard the YouTuber Caleb Hammer, but he's basically a finance bro. He literally has guests on and he analyzes their finances and basically yells at them to get their shit together because most of them are drowning in debt. But he basically has explained to a lot of people who are volunteering or in nonprofits that you can't really volunteer if you're struggling and drowning in debt. It doesn't make sense. If you can't even afford to buy groceries, why are you volunteering? Now, this is not to influence you to not care and not to do anything for the world. Everyone can perform acts of good deeds. But from my personal experiences, I've just taken it way too far in the sense of putting way too many hours into it. I take it too seriously. So I think I really just need to focus on having that full-time job and focusing in content creation. So it's a long-term climb. It's a long-term goal. I don't even know if my eBay is going to work out. Hopefully it does. I need to be more consistent. I have to upload more on it. But it also means making my videos better on YouTube. It means working on my blog posts more consistently. It means making better reels. It's honestly going to be a hustle for the next 2 to 3 years to grow and be sustainable on eBay, because I think that's when I'll start to be able to go full time with that if I'm really consistent. And if I start making ad revenue on YouTube, I'll be able to survive off of that as well. Again, there's no promise it will work, but I think there will be more guarantee it will work if I'm not, volunteering excessively and ignoring my dreams, because I've never really focused on my dreams. Every year people are always I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. And I've never really had resolutions. I never really had things to really look forward to. Last year, I had a vision board and I didn't really follow it. And then it was later on in 2024 when I was I should probably focus on this. And that's when my YouTube videos started popping off. So in actuality, I've only ever really been working on my YouTube since 4 months ago. And if you look at my videos 4 months ago, they kind of suck. And I knew they were gonna suck, and they're slowly getting better. I'm still awkward at making videos. You can tell there's something off with the videos, but I'm trying to practice, and this podcast is also another form of practicing. I'm just getting more comfortable with the things that I want to do. And even though a lot of people are not going to listen, it's still aligned to the broader picture and it's still good practice. I almost think of it as an internship. This is just the internship portion of my content creation journey, and I imagine that in 2 and 3 years it's going to work out. I don't think we ever start off knowing everything will work out. We don't know if we're actually going to get good, but it's like an everyday practice of believing like, oh, we'll get somewhere, like it'll work out. We will see what the final result is when we reach there. So I'm just holding on to that. I've also been thinking about the lack of community we have in 2025, because as we saw in the previous year, a lot of us are struggling to find third spaces, which is basically a place outside of work and home. There isn't a lot of them. There is cafes, but Starbucks is not a good example, especially as they support a genocide. And they play their music so loud that you can't concentrate on what you're doing. And it's by design because they don't want you in that cafe. And then there's libraries, but like libraries are boring. You can't talk. Like, what are you gonna do in there? Just read a book? And then you can go to the mall, but that's just like consumerism. And if you don't have money, then you're kind of out of options. I've been thinking about starting my own local sustainable fashion group, like an in real life fashion group where we just host clothing swaps. I have been thinking about it for a while. It's been like more than a year, but it's been a process to actually have the courage to build community and to build friendships. Hopefully I find a stable job that allows me to have more free time so I can like be part of this community. But I've also been restrained from like taking more action because it is in a way volunteering if I start my own like fashion group. If it's like a once a month clothing swap commitment, probably be like sustainable. It's just I wish there was more ways to find community without having to go out of your way to like make it or to like host certain things, like I wish it wasn't so laborious and so hard to like actually pull something together to meet people. So I may push the goal of having an in real life fashion group for later in the year after I find a stable job. Probably will be very busy on the weekends just trying to make videos and trying to make content in general. So volunteering just doesn't seem to align either ways with my time commitments. Honestly, I'm just really worried. And I do hope to have some sort of savings by the end of December. I hope to have paid my student loans. Like, student loans are so scary. I was thinking about getting my MBA, and oh my god, I would never go back to school given the cost. Like, if you've gotten your MBA, that's impressive. It's just the cost of it is just so unrealistic. Like, why would they charge you that much for business school? It's just crazy. But I've seen people my age like have so much wealth saved from grinding for the past couple of years. But I don't want to compare myself, even though that's been in my head a lot. I just wish to have like at least $10,000 in my checkings account and like $5,000 in my savings account, and have like, again, $10,000 in my student loans paid off. If I'm able to achieve this by December, I just need to stay really focused. There's this idea of like grinding, but I think what I'm trying to do is like growth. Growth means like taking care of yourself. It means prioritizing your well-being versus just giving and giving, or not paying attention to what you actually need in life. Like, for example, too, I've always wanted to be a vegan, but I've never had the money to be a vegan. I've never prioritized having a healthy diet. I've never really had the resources to treat mental health issues. I've never been able to just have a plate full of food that are healthy, like that have fresh fruits, that have fresh vegetables, that have plant-based protein, fresh, healthy drinks. Like, I've never had that in my life. And I think that's sad that I haven't been able to achieve that for myself, because I've been so busy giving to others. Again, helping others is not bad, but when someone literally says I've never been able to properly feed myself because I've been so busy volunteering and giving my money to other things, it's been bad. So I just need to remember to do affirmations. And affirmations are just basically statements of like things that you want, but are stated as if they're already happening or have happened. So your brain knows that it's already happened. So you're just creating the steps or the actions or like the energy to achieve what you already think has happened, because in a way it already has happened. I just need to remember, like, I'm working towards having my own businesses. I'm working towards feeding myself well, to be more balanced in the things that I'm doing. and just being more open to abundance. And hopefully you're opening yourself up for more abundance versus just feeling this pressure to achieve all these things with like no support or no like help from others or from the world. And it's okay to like take, you know, like I've always been the one to give, and I've seen that no one really gives back to me. So I think in this year I'm just gonna expect people to give back or give to me. Not in like, oh, because I gave so much I expect others to give to me now, like a mean thing or like a selfish thing. It's more like I desire for others to help me and desire for others to reach out like I've reached out in the past, because it's a natural balanced thing to do. It's the right thing to do. It's just I've unfortunately have never been surrounded by people that want to give openly and freely or without compromises. And I just really want to manifest good people. I guess that's just really what I want. To feel like I'm not just being extracted of what I have or what I have built for myself through friendships or for, you know, community. And with that said, I really do hope that other people travel and see the world. I think that's been my desire personally for a long time. I think traveling is so eye-opening. The only way I've really traveled is through moving to places, and I realized that you don't have to move somewhere to love the place or to explore the place. But it's never really been in my capacity to just travel. Like I've never been able to have money to go someplace, admire it, and then go back to a landing place. That requires money. It requires planning and free time. And when I was in college, like I double majored. I never really had free time. I was always in school. I was always in the library. And then in high school too, before that, I was always so focused on getting the best grades so I could get into a good college. And after I got out of college, it's like I don't have money because I'm always busy with random responsibilities that don't compensate you. So I've never been able to travel to actually live my life, to actually have free time. I've always wanted to go to London, to New York, Paris. That would be such a dream. I guess just spending more time in nature and like exploring the outdoors is so important for mental health, because one of the things that I've noticed is that because I felt so trapped in the places I was living in, I would just be stuck in my room wishing I could be somewhere else or wishing I could go on adventures. But because I felt so trapped, I couldn't see that I could go out and do that. Like I could go out and visit a very huge national park if I wanted to on a weekend, because when I lived in Montana, I lived next to the Yellowstone National Park, and I was literally an hour away, okay? And within the 2.5 years I lived there, I never bothered to go. And I didn't even realize it was so close. I didn't know it was like just an hour away. But I had no one to go with. I had no one to like explore the city with. I really was just so disillusioned with life because of how people were treating me that I didn't even bother to like love the place I'd moved to. I guess I've just been hurt a long time and poor so long that I've never just had a moment to be like, oh, let me explore. And instead I've just been feeling caged for a long time. And I think I feel like my 18-year-old version again in 2025, where I'm like, the world is before me. The world is open to me. I'm not stuck in organizations or stuck in roles. I'm now a free person with free will that can do what she wishes and what she wishes, because she's not so tied down to all these external, you know, unpaid responsibilities that just were weighing on me for such a long time. So I really do feel like I'm building my life. I almost see it like an avatar in a Bratz game, where the Brat is just like running around the town and exploring and seeing things and building things up. I feel like I'm in the beginning of my video game. I don't know if that made sense, but I hope that makes sense. If there's someone actually listening to this, I really hope it's making sense. I'm not trying to make this podcast dark. I feel like what I'm trying to say is like everyone's life can start any time of year, and I find it annoying that we all start in January because it brings pressure. But for me, there's that pressure obviously, but also like a hope that I'm starting a new phase, like a new video game where I can like go and explore and see things, because I'm not just like tied down to so many different random stuff. And the hope is that you can also feel that joy, that happiness to start your video game, your new beginning, however it looks like. It really does. I really do hope it works out for you. There will be challenges, obviously. It's going to be difficult for me, especially since like I don't really have savings or money. Not to negate anyone else's suffering or like challenges. Yeah, to have my own place, like a studio, feels so impossible because of all my past decisions. Like I don't have pay stubs to show a studio owner to confirm that I can actually pay. Like I can't tell the landlord, hey, like I'm a trustworthy person or a stable person, because in reality I haven't been that person, because I keep believing things because I'm always so unfulfilled with everything, because I haven't been true to myself. So in a way, everything's a symptom. And I think one of my other resolutions is to get my own studio in a suburb in Illinois. And they're actually super affordable. They're like $1,000 a month in just rent, which if you compare that to like LA or New York, that's barely a room there. So I would rather have my own studio than sharing a room with like 2-3 other people. And I would also be able to have a pet, because I already have the location that I want in mind. And they also have like a gym there, they have a pool there, they have like walkable trails, they have a complex just surrounded by a lot of nature, and I really love that. And it's close enough to family, it's close enough to the things that I like in the city that I'm currently in. The prerequisites are kind of crazy. They ask for so much. Like I just kind of want a simple life. I don't quote unquote want a normal life. I just want a stable life. And I think my efforts to qualify for a studio will mean that I'm focused and aligned to what matters to me versus what the world wants for me or it demands of me. So hopefully you find what you think gives you the most stability or gives you the most alignment. But for me, I just kind of like want my own place that I can be in for years and years and years. So basically like a stable home. And I used to be a tenant union organizer. One of the main reasons I feel like I was drawn to that work was because I just wanted a stable home. And I started fighting so hard for others to have safe and affordable housing when I didn't even have that myself. So I think if I desire something, I should probably work for it myself. And then if I can achieve it, work for others to have it. Like fill my own cup and then fill other ones. In the past, I could also never imagine myself having stable housing. It just felt so impossible. And I didn't have really any support for that to happen. Because again, you need money for that to happen. But when you're giving your time away, that's not possible. So I could never really see myself having, you know, softness, to have like coziness, to have comfort, to have peace. And that really can do a lot of harm and a lot of negativity in personal aspects of your self-esteem, how you see yourself in relationship with others. I really do think that my studio, my own space, having my own, you know, pet, my own cat, will be the beginning of what I've always needed and desired, to feel human. I think plants and flowers will be such a beautiful thing. Like, can you imagine having a little plant on top of the shower? I don't know. It's like very Pinterest coded, but I think that would be so cool. Like having a bookshelf with books and plants, just having a fridge full of unprocessed food. Like now listening to myself, just like predicting how I'm going to be perceived. Like these are basic things that we all should have. Like we should all have a stable home, we should all have friends, we should all have community, we should all have like a dream, we should all have a stable job, we should all have, you know, time to travel the world, to find stability some way. It feels so normal to say these things after realizing that, but for me it's a lot because I've never like prioritized my own safe and dignified life. I think one of the things that we're also facing, or maybe it's just me, is like time scarcity. Time scarcity is when you don't have the time to do things that you've always wanted to do. For me, that was cooking. And I ended up hating it because I felt like it was a domestic duty that I could only ever do if I was to be married. Because that was the assumption I had in my brain. If I was to ever end up cooking, it would be for a husband or for a partner, because that would be the only time I'd really settle down and have time to do that. And so I ended up resenting it with that assumption, with the wrong assumption that I would only have time to cook for a man, basically. I think one of the resolutions I have this year is to cook for myself, but I really do want to get into vegan cooking. Vegan cooking. The English language is so annoying because it's so tough on your like vocals. It's like you have to like be so strict with how you say things. Yes, I want to do vegan cooking. That sounds so nasty when I say it, but I cannot say vegan cooking. I sound like an American. Vegan cooking. I don't like English. I've been learning French and it's so nice and soft and like, I don't know. It's almost like Spanish. It's very poetic. And then you go back to English and it's like, you got to pronunciate. You gotta say things harshly. And I'm like, I don't want to. But yeah, I've never done vegan food cooking. I've never really spent time in the kitchen. I will turn around the idea that cooking is oppressive and turn it to an idea of empowerment for myself. This white girl once was telling me you have to cook. It's an essential thing. I'm like, yeah, you have to cook, but like that doesn't necessarily make it empowering. Like it's not something I ever really enjoyed, but I feel like I've been bored a lot of times where I think it'll be fulfilling or nice to have something to do that allows me to be nourished. You know, it's just nourishing myself. I don't know if that made sense. It can be self-care. It can be a hobby. It's just, I don't really want people to expect anything from me because I do that. And with the studio too, it also literally gives space for hosting friends. I've always loved hosting. I've always loved the idea of having Friendsgivings, of having like Christmas Eve parties, of having a New Year's Eve party. I just love the parties that are just bringing people together to have a good time, a wholesome time. I don't like clubs. I don't love standard parties. I really don't like 20-year-olds parties where you only are expected to drink and there's no food and there's no time to talk and it's just dancing. Like, if I wanted to dance and drink, I would probably go to a club. And I don't go to clubs. So why would you invite me to a party and just have drinks out? Like, and that's never been my vibe. Like, I'm more into like the wholesome, small hangouts or more like conversation-based, food-based. Ideally, no liquor. Maybe like a light wine or something. Or like a fancy drink of some sort to complement the meal. But anyways, to end the podcast, since it's just been going on random tangents, I think learning is fashionable, to be honest. I feel like learning is so undermined in this current digital era. So if you're reading more books, like major shout out, because I get distracted on social media all the time. And I've been reading a lot of business books recently too, which honestly are more informative than any of the business classes I ever took for my bachelor's. I think learning can also come hands-on, like doing things that you actually care about. Like you can stay in the theoretics of like, oh, I want to do like YouTube, oh, I want to do a podcast, but you gotta learn through these random trials and tribulations to actually get good. Like this podcast, it's technically not good. Is it going to be listened to by people that care about fashion or ethical fashion? Probably not, but I think some of my friends or people that I used to be connected to will listen to this. Like, I don't know. Maybe you're stalking me. I have no idea who's listening, but hopefully it's worth some of the efforts I'm putting into it. Also, one of the last things I want to talk about is my fashion era. It's so subjective, but for me, I've always been super afraid to dress the way that I want to. Like, I kind of dress like basic. I've always dressed basic, but I've always loved fashion. And I always admire people that dress the way that is unique and individual. But I've never really had the courage to dress like my Pinterest boards, which is so sad. But it takes courage. It takes fearlessness to move forward, even if you're going to get judged for how you dress. But one of the things I did realize that has stopped me from dressing how I want to dress is the fear of like harm. And by this I mean I've lived in majority white towns for the past like 4 years, and I never really felt safe in those communities. And I just realized this the other day, like I dressed the same as a basic white girl so I could feel safer. and kind of had this assumption that if I dressed more dramatically or with color or more different, it would be a threat to my safety, and I just could not see myself being more in a scary situation than I currently was. So now that I'm in Illinois and feel safe, or safer than before, I really do want to practice like my true fashion era. I want to like get more aquamarine, sort of like mermaid vibes going on, get matcha green colors in there. I love my green. I like super hyper feminine clothing, so I'm going to try doing that. And then just incorporating more of the way that I see fashion in my collections. I think that will be super fulfilling. But to end off the podcast, I just also really wish us to be kinder and nicer to each other and to ourselves. I feel like one of the main things I've noticed is that I'm very harsh. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've made a lot of judgments that have caused hurt for myself, and I hold that to a very harsh degree because I'm like, why did I waste all my time, or why am I doing this, or why am I doing that? And I think I've just pressured myself to kind of not like who I am because of all the past experience I've had and how people have treated me. I really do wish people don't see themselves the way that I see myself. Like, I don't want others to pressure themselves. I don't want people to feel stressed about their new journey, their new chapter. I don't want people to feel overwhelmed with their goals, or to feel like they need to do things that others want them to do. So I'm just wishing y'all the best in your journey, and hopefully people wish me the best in my journey. And even if I do feel like I have lofty goals for 2025, even if I do want to reach 20,000 subscribers on YouTube, even if I do want this podcast to be listened to a bit more, even if I want to go full-time on eBay, I don't think that's going to all happen this year necessarily. It's probably going to happen in 2 years or 3 years, and it's going to take time. You're going to have to be very dedicated, very focused, but I like it. I think I actually feel more at peace and more content with my life than I've ever had, ever. I can continue to focus on that, continue to focus on building myself up and not signing myself up for a million things. I think one of the underlying reasons why I volunteered so much was to prove that I was a good person, that I was doing, I guess, good things for the world. But again, I've just have grown very resentful and very down on my luck because of it. So hopefully by the end of this year, I'm a little bit happier as a person, less resentful. I'm able to not be as irritated from my past experiences, to not be so jaded. And I just really want that stability. And I hope people that are privileged can step up and do things that matter and do things that will benefit society versus expecting, low-income Latinos to step up for them. The most oppressed are often expected to fight the most to get what they deserve at the end of the day, which is a good life. So, I could go on and on and on about the things I wish to see in the world, but I think just having like friends and like having my YouTube be a consistent thing, having an opportunity to voice my thoughts in a podcast, to live stream, to continue to grow my eBay, to continue to have a sense of community will all be so important for me. I think I will be in a better place by December of 2025, and hopefully you're in a good place by 2025, but we don't really know what's going to happen this year. Obviously there's a lot of uncertainty, so I again, affirmations, reminding yourself what matters is going to be important. I hope this podcast resonated, that you found some solace or resonance in my challenges and my experiences in my journey. I don't know what's happening in your life. I don't know what struggles you have. I don't know how you're feeling about this New Year's, and that's kind of the beauty of like individuality. So hopefully you don't get lost in the chaos. You don't get derailed by the world pushing 100 different agendas on you, and that you can continue to find your most true, authentic self in the journey of what we call life, and to not get consumed by Trump, because the Trump hate will probably be a huge thing this year. It will be a real challenge for the next 4 years. I think just trying to be kind and nice on an everyday basis will be good enough for those struggling to have money, who live check by check. At least that's what I try to remind myself. So yeah, try to do what you can, and hopefully this episode was worthwhile, even though it was kind of just talking about my life. I think I'm just gonna end it there. Hopefully you had a good Sunday, and until next time, peace and love.